Hey guys, it's Chris here. I've decided to start doing Q&A videos as well as my normal deep dive and episode review videos, and this is Q&A number 1 for The Expanse. I might butcher your name, and if so, I apologize in advance. Tony Altieri asks, could you explain the weapons tech, passage of time, burn, reverse burn, and how the UN uses BASIC to control and oppress Earthers? Why, yes, Tony, I can. First up, let's talk about weapons tech. First off, this is a great question. One of the things that I love about the books is how much research has been done to make as much of, what happens as plausible as possible. Weapons in the Expanse can be broken down into a number of categories, but I'm going to focus on 3 categories for this video, since it covers the majority of what you see in the show. These categories are military small arms, civilian small arms, and ship-to-ship weapons. First, let's take a look at military and civilian small arms. These are the weapons carried by the Martian and UN Marines, as well as people like on ship or station security. They come in 2 main flavors, traditional and 0G. As the name implies, the 0G weapons are designed to be used in null gravity, so they fire bullets with propulsion built in, which is fucking awesome. The reason for this is that you want as little recoil as possible when you don't have gravity rooting you in place. Traditional weapons still use gunpowder or a similar substance to propel their bullets. Speaking of bullets, both categories of handgun can either use hardened, armor-piercing rounds, made to pierce Martian armor and or UN armor, or ship and station hulls, or non-lethal rounds usually made of gel or rubber. And just to be clear, rubber bullets can be lethal to non-armored targets, but they do little to no damage to a station or ship, which is why they are preferred in a place when there's a hard vacuum right on the other side of the wall. When on station or ship, everything is geared toward that end, even the warfare, hence the gel and rubber bullets. That leaves us with the last category, ship to ship. These weapons are mainly made up of traditional projectile weapons like railguns and PDCs or point defense cannons. Without the worry of 0G making you bounce off the ceiling when you fire, most of these weapons are more traditional and thereby deadlier. PDCs are used mainly to protect your ship from torpedoes, and in the event of CQB, or close quarters battle, to deal significant damage to the opposing ship. With little to no friction, projectiles fired from these weapons don't suffer significant decrease in speed, and theoretically will go on forever at that speed if they don't collide with something else like, a ship, a satellite, or a planet. The other weapon you will find used for ship-to-ship combat are torpedoes. These are the long-range weapons of the Expanse universe. They can accelerate and sustain incredibly high G speeds and carry either traditional explosives or nuclear payloads. The Kant was scuttled by torpedoes carrying nuclear warheads, for instance. Okay, let's talk about the passage of time. This is one of the biggest changes between the show and the source material, and it makes sense, so it doesn't bother me as much. The brass tacks of it all is that even in the Expanse, it takes forever to get anywhere. While the Epstein drive allows for high G burn, the human body can't handle sustained high Gs for very long. While adding in the juice allows humans to sustain higher G flight for longer periods of time, it does not make it infinite. Trips in the books takes weeks and months, not hours. Even a flight that lasts 48 hours would actually take much longer, since you have to take breaks to eat, go to the bathroom, and allow your body to rest. As you can imagine, this doesn't make for compelling TV, so the times are either condensed or just not mentioned at all. As an example, the trip the Knight took to the Donager lasted 2 weeks in the novel, and only about 4 hours in the show. The distance between the 2 ships was potentially 360 million kilometers. For the 2 ships to have met in 4 hours, they would have both been moving at 45 million kilometers an hour, or roughly 4% of the speed of light, which is nuts. Okay, let's talk about burn and reverse burn. So, all space flight in the Expanse is made up of these two phases, the burn and the flip and burn. The spaceships are essentially giant rocket engines that you sit on top of. Thrust only happens in one direction. We'll call it behind us, since there aren't any actual directions in space. So say you were wanting to go to Mars from Earth. At its closest, due to orbits and all that, Mars is 65 million kilometers from Earth. At a constant rate of 1g, 9.80665 meters per second squared, it would take 1 day, 7 hours, 58 minutes, and 5 seconds. Of course, that isn't without a flip and burn, which means we would zoom right on past Mars, since we have no way to slow down in space, and even if we did, like a giant reverse thruster on the front of the ship, the sudden deceleration would probably kill everyone on board. Hence the flip and burn. What this means, essentially, is at the midway point to your destination, you have to cut your engines and flip the ship 180 degrees, so that the engine is now pointing towards your destination as opposed to away from it. As we covered in the weapons section, objects in space, in motion, retain their speed since there is little to no friction. The burn after the flip is to slow the ship down enough to safely land or dock when we reach Mars. With a flip and burn thrown in, our transit time to Mars would be 1 day, 21 hours, 13 minutes, and 1 second. Of course, increasing the G's of the burn cuts down the transit time, but it increases the strain on the passengers. With each increase in G, the feeling of your weight doubles. So for instance, if you are 180 pounds at 1G, it will feel like you weigh 360 pounds at 2G. And things like the pressure needed to circulate your blood doubles, which is why people eventually pass out under high G strain. The blood that carries oxygen to your brain begins pooling at your feet under positive G, which you feel as you accelerate. Okay, so finally we're going to talk about the UN and basic. This is a tricky one. The question presumes that the propaganda that you hear the Martians and the Belters quote is true, which in some sense it is, and in some sense it isn't. I believe from the question that you haven't read the books, since this is explored more, especially from Bobby's point of view, it makes the issue much more nuanced and complicated. But regardless, let's get into it. First, it's important to understand why BASIC exists. It didn't just get pulled out of thin air. When you enter the world of the Expanse, Earth has close to 30 million inhabitants. With this number of people, the job market is cutthroat. Put plainly, there aren't enough jobs for the people living on Earth. It isn't an issue of laziness. The jobs don't exist. So the question becomes, as a government tasked with the preservation and well-being of your citizens, how do you combat this issue? The answer, it seems, at least in the Expanse universe, is to create a basic income that anyone can apply for. Basically, it's socialism on a global scale. The people who are able to land jobs work and make a living, and the surplus they generate is used to support those who can't get jobs. At least that's the way it was conceived. But of course, as with all things, there is a rub. Human beings are involved, so exploitation was bound to happen. There are always going to be those who wish to prey on the system, but as Bobby found out in the novels, the image that she, as well as many other Martians and Belters, have of a population that's fat and drug-addled wasn't actually true. Many people on BASIC were only on it until they could earn enough work credits, a year's worth, to go to school, where they would be trained and given jobs when they became available. I guess so in essence the answer to your question is that it isn't used to oppress anyone in the novels. Just the opposite in my opinion. It creates opportunity to improve yourself and your station in life if you are willing to work. And if you're not, you at least are able to survive, which, I mean, from my point of view, is a hell of a lot better than we do today. Okay, that is our first question and answer session done. My thanks to Tony for the great questions. If you want to be in the running for the next Q&A, hit the Expanse Facebook group I'm in. It'll be linked in the description, and ask me some questions. And if you want to be a part of a Shannara Q&A, join the Shannara Facebook group I'm in, also going to be in the description, and hit me up there. Okay, this was fun. I loved researching. It's one of the things I like doing. And I apologize for how long this took to get out, but I redid this video like 4 times because I can never be happy with what I do and I always want to do better. And I'm always wanting to push myself and make something amazing for you guys to look at. And sometimes that means I'm my own worst enemy. So I think I have the format for this down now. And I'm just going to stick to doing things this way for a while. So the next Q&A should not take forever and a day. Okay, that's it for me. As always, subscribe if you're not, it means a lot, and thumbs up if you like this, thumbs down if you didn't, it helps me see how well I'm doing, and hit that notification bell if you want to know when new videos are out so you don't miss them. I'll see you in the next video, guys. Thanks.